scientific investigation practice today, and we're going to show you 3 lab demos. And what I want you to do is think about what a problem would be for the lab, an independent variable, a dependent variable, and what the control group might be. So, safety goggles on, and let's get to the lab. Okay, so as you can see, we got a lab set up here, several things on the counter. We have some salt, digital scales. We have 3 bowls here, one that says no salt, one that says 2 grams of salt, and one that says 4 grams of salt. Inside each is an ice cube, and I have my phone with a stopwatch. So what we're doing is we are trying to look and see how salt will affect the melting of ice cubes. We're measuring out salt on our scales. We put no salt on the first one. We put 2 grams of salt here on the second one. And we put 4 on that one. And then we start our stopwatch to see how long it takes for it to melt. Now, what I would like you to do is pause your video and try to think about what a good problem and what your independent, dependent variables are and what the control group is. And we'll come back and discuss it. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to go through and figure these things out, or at least try. When you write a good problem, you're going to have both the independent and the dependent variable within the problem. So, for this one, you could have had something like what is the effect of salt on the time ice melts? Question mark, because it is a question. Okay? So looking, and you could have written it a slightly different way, but I'm going to show you in a minute how this has got both the independent and the dependent variable in the actual problem. All right, so looking at independent variable. Remember we said that is what you physically change at the beginning of the experiment. So what were we able to control in this experiment at the beginning? It was salt. How much salt? Remember we had 3 bowls. One had no salt. One had 2 grams of salt. One had 4 grams of salt. So we were controlling at the beginning of the experiment the amount of salt that we were using. Okay? Dependent variable is what you are kind of waiting to see what happens in the experiment. It's going to be what you're measuring at the end. And in this case, we had the stopwatch going. So our dependent variable was the time it took the ice to melt. Okay? And I would have, if we were doing this experiment for real, I would have told you make sure you record it in seconds or minutes so everybody was consistent with their units. All right, and the last thing is our control group. Now remember, we discussed in the lecture, in the PowerPoint, that your control group is what you keep normal. You don't apply the independent variable to it. So in this case, remember we had the bowl that did not have any salt at all. So normally you don't put salt on ice unless you really, trying to do the roadways or what when it's snowing. But in this case, at home, you're trying to have some, ice. You're not going to put salt on it. So ice without salt. So that way you're going to see how long it takes for just the ice cube by itself to melt, and then you'll be able to compare the other 2 that had the salt on them to see if their times differ and see what effect the salt did have on the melting times. Okay, so this is video sample scientific method demo number 1. And I'm going to do 2 more, so you can check those out if you need to.